The state has revoked the teaching license of a North Central high school teacher following allegations of misconduct involving students. Nathan Schul agreed to surrender his teaching license on January 6. But WRTV Investigates has uncovered this is not the first time Schul has faced allegations of misconduct at an Indiana school district. Our Kara Kenny spoke with a dozen of Schul's former students, and she's digging into how he got hired in the first place. We want to warn you, some viewers may find this content disturbing.
Ashley Nation is a married mother of two. It's taken her 12 years to come to terms with what she says happened while she was a student at Silver Creek High School in Sellersburg, Indiana. Ashley says she first met Nathan Schul in 2008 when he was hired as the theater director.
I had a lot of things going on my senior year in my home life that were at times a little rough for me.
Ashley says Nathan Schul earned her trust. He took an interest in her personal life and relationships, and eventually things turned physical.
It started simple, as in like put his hand on my shoulder or the small of my back. And then it turned into him, coming up and commenting and say, hey, I just want to let you know your looks really great in those pants today. And it just slowly, became more. And he would come up and he would, grab my butt or, make comments.
Ashley says she and Schul had a sexual relationship once she turned 18.
After high school, our relationship escalated a little more. And after a few times being with him, I realized that this wasn't right.
At the time, Ashley didn't tell anyone.
He said that people wouldn't understand. We have to keep this to ourselves. You can't tell anyone. They won't understand how I care for you.
Olivia Castetter also attended Silver Creek and says Schul groomed students, asked them about their sex lives, and made inappropriate comments.
And he would comment on how good the girls looked, depending on what they were wearing. There were certain girls he would comment on. After I graduated and turned 18, he would ask for details about my sexual relationships at that point.
Schul's behavior caught the attention of fellow employees as well. Kathy Ryan served as Silver Creek's assistant drama director alongside Schul.
It was really sad, the amount of abuse, verbal and mental abuse that was going on that was allowed. I probably reported Nathan over 10 times to his administrators.
Kathy quit as assistant drama director in 2011. Her resignation letter outlining concerns about Nathan Schul, including allegations that students had access to pornographic images on his personal laptop. Yet records show Schul stayed employed with Silver Creek for another year and a half after this letter until he resigned September 28, 2012. The reasons for his resignation are not public record.
I was under the impression that he would not teach again.
Ashley Nation told only her husband about her interactions with Schul. That is until 2020.
I found out that he was teaching at a school in Indianapolis, North Central, and that is when I said something about what had happened to me, and I personally called the school.
Ashley's call to North Central High School prompted Washington Township schools to investigate, as well as the Indiana Department of Education. On May 26, 2020, Washington Township fired Nathan Schul. The district told us it found Schul made false statements in his job application in an effort to conceal his resignation from a previous employer due to allegations of inappropriate interactions with students at that school corporation. WRTV Investigates did some checking and found not only did Schul resign from Silver Creek in 2012, he also resigned from La Plata High School in Maryland in 2007 after working there for a year.
What do you think of our system?
I think it's broken.
Ashley Nation is victim one in the Indiana Department of Education's complaint against Nathan Schul, filed on November 23rd. It outlines complaints from former students at both Silver Creek and North Central, including allegations Schul talked with students about sex and drugs. WRTV Investigates also tracked down victim three in that complaint.
Verbally, I got targeted a lot.
Natalie Schilling graduated from North Central last year and did theater under Schul's direction.
Varying comments talking about how I was ugly, untalented. He would heavily imply that I should kill myself. Like he would say, hey,
you should jump off that platform, see if you hit your head.
Former North Central students say they reported Schul's behavior, including Jeremy Rogers, who says he and his parents emailed complaints in 2013, shortly after Schul was hired. Jeremy says Schul mocked him after he dislocated his thumb during a rehearsal.
I alerted the faculty of misconduct by Nathan Schul during his first semester teaching at the school where he was employed. And the department, the administration seemed completely uninterested.
Former students say Schul's behavior continued at North Central for 7 years.
He came over to me, grabbed me by the collar, and pulled me as close as he could towards him and said, "If you ever talk to me like that ever again, I will take you out of the show so fast you won't know what hit you."
In all, WRTV Investigates spoke with or received written statements from a dozen of Nathan Schul's former students, alleging they were victims or witnesses of Schul's behavior that the school district described in a letter to the state as serious misbehavior and misconduct.
In front of the entire cast, he made comments about her boobs being too big for the costume.
He said that her breasts looked too big in the costume, but he also almost said it in a way where like he liked that they looked that way in the costume, and he wanted the audience to be able to see that. And I thought that was incredibly inappropriate.
More than 1,500 people have signed this petition urging North Central administrators to take student concerns seriously, and they say the school never should have hired Nathan Schul in the first place.
This is the population that we need to protect the most, and it feels like we're letting them down over and over again.
So how did this happen? We asked Mike McCarty with Safe Hiring Solutions, a Danville company that provides background screening services and training to more than 1,000 school corporations across the country.
Would you consider it a red flag if someone has resigned from 2 different school corporations?
I would certainly want to know a lot more.
McCarty says in 2013, many schools were hesitant to tell other schools why an employee left.
The reluctance was almost uniformly the standard. Didn't want to talk, didn't want to give any information.
Schul would have passed a criminal history check because he has no criminal history.
80% of sex offenders have no criminal history.
Indiana implemented a new law in 2017 that closes some of the gaps and requires schools to contact previous school districts and references, and removed the barriers of confidentiality agreements.
It would make it much more difficult today for him to be hired than it was back in 2013. Based on the law, if it's another school district, they do and they are required to tell you if they left under suspicion or were asked to resign, or if there was any issue related to a student.
Washington Township Schools says in 2013, Schul made false statements in his application about his resignation from a previous school corporation. McCarty says gaps still remain in Indiana when an applicant leaves off a previous employer. His company is working on tools that would search tax records to find all employers, whether they're listed on an application or not.
It's a never-ending process.
We checked with the Indiana Department of Education, who told us Nathan Schul's license revocation will be added to a national database that should prevent him from getting a job in another state. Here in Indiana, Schul will not be able to teach in a public school for the next 3 years. After that, he has to go before an administrative judge before he can get reinstated.
I want to know for a fact that he doesn't step foot in a classroom ever again.
WRTV Investigates contacted Schul, and we got a response from his attorney saying Schul would not provide a comment. In his interview with North Central, Schul said he resigned from Silver Creek because he was working too many hours. When they asked him about Ashley Nation's allegations, records show Schul laughed and said clearly there was something wrong with the victim and he was happy she was getting therapy.
It made me angry. It made me hurt all over again. But honestly, it made me more determined than ever to talk about what he did.
Ashley made a report with Sellersburg police, but they told her too much time had passed. We showed Indianapolis Metro Police the state's complaint against Nathan Schul. IMPD contacted the Department of Child Services. DCS tells us Indiana law prohibits disclosure of our involvement. Ashley Nation and other former students of Nathan Schul say the system failed them.
Do you feel the school could have done more to protect students.
Yes, they could have done a whole lot more.
Silver Creek is now under a new school corporation. Their operations director says they take allegations of teacher misconduct seriously. Former students of Nathan Schul are urging schools to improve their hiring processes and create anonymous tip lines for reporting misconduct.
I want to see change in schools. This is an opportunity for us as victims to let our voices be heard so that these schools can understand what they need to do to fix this problem.
Working for you, Kara Kenny, WRTV.
Well, Washington Township schools declined an on-camera interview, but they told us they did not find any evidence of inappropriate sexual conduct regarding Schul and its students.
They released a statement saying, quote, additionally, and before any issues regarding Mr. Schul came to light, the district made important changes to its hiring practices to require a more thorough review of candidates through its continuing efforts to improve its practices. The district alerted the Indiana Department of Education regarding this matter, and the district applauds the hard work of the Indiana Department of Education in investigating this matter.
And the Indiana Department of Education also declined to be interviewed, but said the actions of those individuals described in this report are repugnant and should in no way reflect upon the more than 78,000 educators who work with integrity, serving Hoosier students and families every day, end quote. You can read their full statements in this story on the WRTV app and at WRTV.com.